Coming up in SBS World News, the US president decides how he'll respond to Iran and its proxies after a deadly attack on American troops. Israeli troops disguised as doctors and patients kill 3 Palestinian militants in a West Bank hospital. And Malaysia's king takes the throne as part of the country's rotational monarchy. Good evening. US President Joe Biden says he wants to avoid a wider war in the Middle East. He's reached a decision on how to respond to a drone strike by Iran-backed militants in Jordan. 3 American troops were killed. The White House says the response will play out over several days through a tiered approach.
President Biden confirming retaliation but sparing the details. Washington has blamed pro-Iranian militias in Iraq for the attack on Tower 22, an American military base in Jordan. Their umbrella organisation, Kataib HEZBOLLAH, has since announced it will suspend its military operations against US troops in the region. In a statement on Telegram, it said, "As we announce the suspension of military and security operations against the occupation forces in order to prevent embarrassment of the Iraqi government, we will continue to defend our people in Gaza in other ways." President Biden has vowed to protect troops, a tough task with more than 30,000 in bases across the Middle East. Qatar hosts the largest US base, while 2,500 personnel are in Iraq and another 900 are in Syria. According to the US Department of Defense, since the start of the Israel-Hamas war, there's been more than 160 attacks on US Army bases. Some of these have been independently verified by the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. The US has been retaliating with airstrikes on militia bases, but it hasn't stopped the attacks.
When I say actions speak louder than words, there has been 3 attacks, to my knowledge, since the 28th of January, and I'll just leave it there.
There's still no details about where the US strikes might occur and whether they would target Iran directly, although Biden maintains he doesn't want a wider war in the Middle East.
One would expect, I think, and in an election year, against a challenger in Donald Trump, who has taken decisive, bold action through assassination in Iran itself, Biden faces the terrible charge that he's weak when it comes to defending not just American interests, but American personnel.
Neither has the president given a timeline for any response. Mahnoz Anguri, SBS World News.
UN member states have met the Secretary-General in New York amid allegations of misconduct by staff working for the organisation's relief agency in Gaza. Israel's continuing with its objective to eliminate Hamas. Israeli troops, disguised as civilians and medical staff, have killed 3 members of Palestinian armed groups in a hospital in the West Bank city of Jenin. And a warning, the following report has distressing images.
Filing through the halls of Ibn Sina Hospital, Israeli forces in disguise, some in medical attire, others dressed as women, on a mission to kill. Guns in one hand, a handbag and a baby carrier in the other.
قاموا بتصفية الشباب الثلاثي باسل محمد الغزاوي ومحمد جلامني في غرفتهم. كانوا نائمين على أسرتهم في الغرفة، وقاموا تصفيتهم بدم بارد مباشرة في عيرة نارية في الرأس.
This is the bloody aftermath. One of the men belonged to Hamas, the other 2 were members of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Israel says the trio was, quote, planning to carry out a serious attack and to kill Israeli civilians.
We do not want to turn hospitals into battlefields, with patients on the right, doctors and nurses on the left, and terrorists in the middle. But we are even more determined not to allow hospitals in Gaza, Judea and Samaria, Lebanon, above ground or in tunnel shafts and tunnels under hospitals, to become a place that is a cover for terrorism.
Meeting troops in the West Bank, the Israeli Prime Minister claimed Israeli forces have killed 500, quote, terrorists, saying there's more to be done, including today in Jenin. While the US State Department is continuing to push for a pause in fighting to allow for the release of the remaining Israeli hostages, Mr Netanyahu insists Israel will not be withdrawing troops from Gaza or releasing Palestinian prisoners.
אני שומע אמירות על כל מיני עסקאות, אז אני רוצה להבהיר. אנחנו לא נסיים את המלחמה הזאת עם פחות מהשגת כל יעדיה. וזה אומר חיסול החמאס, החזרת כל חטופינו, והבטחה שעזה לא תהווה עוד איום על ישראל.
The UN chief briefed representatives from 35 member states and the EU on the UN's Relief and Works Agency in the Palestinian territories, which is embroiled in controversy after Israel claimed at least 12 of its employees were involved in the October 7 attacks, resulting in the suspension of funding from multiple key donor nations, including the US.
I know that we need to see fundamental changes before we can resume providing funding directly to UNRWA. And as you know, we shouldn't let that cloud the great work that UNRWA does.
The UN Security Council, meanwhile, expressing concern for the, quote, dire and rapidly deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza, reiterating the urgent need to expand the flow of aid. Tanya Dandrinos, SBS World News.
One of Ukraine's most senior military commanders has refused a request from President Volodymyr Zelensky to step down as tension escalates between the two leaders. Ukraine's second biggest city has come under another Russian drone attack, according to local officials. Buildings were left burnt and damaged and 3 people were slightly injured. In Russia, Defence Minister Sergei Shoigu says the country is stepping up its weapon manufacturing, with the production of air defence missiles doubling. In developing news now out of Pakistan, and former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife have been given a 14-year sentence over a graft case. Khan's lawyer says they will challenge the conviction at the High Court. Last night, Khan was jailed for 10 years for leaking state secrets. Sentences his supporters and party will not accept.
Imran Khan faithful gathered to rally against his jail time when a bomb killed 4 people in Pakistan's Balochistan region, including 3 members of the former Prime Minister's party. A few hours earlier, this 71-year-old was sentenced for leaking official secrets when he waved a confidential document at a rally in 2022. Proof, he said, of a conspiracy between the military and Washington to topple his government.
It is a violation of the fairness and the free and fair trial. The judges actually struck down our right to produce evidence, our right to cross-examine.
He's been fighting dozens of cases since he was ousted by a vote of no confidence after analysts say he lost the confidence of the military.
I just think Imran Khan could have played his game better after he lost his position. But he set in motion conditions that actually presented him as a threat to Pakistan's stability and contributed to economic downfall as well.
Parliamentary elections are just days away. Khan banned from running. His Tehreek-e-Insaf party says it's fallen victim to an ongoing crackdown. It says 4 members were arrested on Tuesday. Hundreds more remain detained.
Chief Justice Saab, जो गरीब लोग, जो ख़वातीन, जो बेगुनाह लोग जेलों के अंदर हैं इस वक्त, उनको रिहाई करवाई जाए उनकी.
The February 8 vote is going ahead in the shadows of alleged military interference. Nawaz Sharif is leading polls, but will likely need to form a coalition. He's been leader 3 times, ousted early each tenure, just like every Prime Minister.
I'm in Pakistan, so I've been asking people their views, and what I see is it's a very mixed picture at the moment. So the fact that today Imran Khan is sentenced to jail doesn't mean the end of his political life. He could still come back, because that's Pakistan's politics history.
Off the ballot, not out of the picture. Liz Maddock, SBS World News.
Indigenous leaders in Brazil's Amazon rainforest have said illegal miners are returning to their lands. Brazil's President Lula da Silva banned mining in Indigenous areas of the forest when he returned to power, but lax enforcement has allowed some miners to return. The Yanomami people have seen their population decimated in recent years from disease and violence related to mining.
A suspicious plane breaking the no-fly rules over Indigenous territory. A sign of increasing disregard for laws which protect Brazil's First Nations people. Illegal miners have been using helicopters and boats to infiltrate Yanomami territory. They continue to extract gold using dangerous chemicals, despite Indigenous pleas for this to stop.
I need your support to put pressure on the boss of the illegal miners. He has never been arrested. He has to go to jail. He's doing a lot of damage. What he's doing to the Brazilian Indigenous people is very harmful.
The government has declared a health emergency for the Yanomami people. According to a new report by the Hutakara Yanomami Association, more than a third of Yanomami deaths in 2023 were from diseases associated with the influx of miners and their activities.
Carne ilegal é muito ruim para nós, mas o buraco ficou. Aonde que eles trabalharam?
The presence of armed miners also make it harder for health workers to provide care for the Yanomami. In a rare visit to the territory earlier this year, agents of the Brazilian Institute of Environment and Renewable Natural Resources, known as IBAMA, visited and say they still believe there can be an end to illegal mining.
If there is coordination and everyone sees this as a war, like IBAMA, and fights this as a war, I think we can make a lot of progress.
For now, one of the largest Indigenous populations in the Amazon is still facing death and destruction. Yusuf Saudi, SBS World News.
Malaysia has a new king who'll reign for 5 years. He's the head of one of 9 royal families that take turns sitting on the country's throne. The nation's been plagued by years of political turmoil, and the new head of state is promising stability and also a hard line on corruption.
At the National Palace, Sultan Ibrahim Iskandar ascends the throne as the country's 17th king. The 65-year-old ruler of Johor, Malaysia's southernmost and third largest state, replaces outgoing monarch Sultan Abdullah Ahmad Shah in Malaysia's rotational monarchy, where a new king is chosen from among the country's 9 sultans every 5 years.
When the British left Malaysia in 1957, they had a very tricky problem to resolve, and that was how to appoint the King of Malaysia. At that time, there were 9 sultans altogether, and it was very difficult for the British to choose one over the other. So they came up with a very unique system.
The elected king, known in Malay as the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, is one of Malaysia's richest and most powerful figures. He's also known as an outspoken and hands-on leader who says he wants to clean up corruption and ensure stability after the country had 4 prime ministers in a period of 5 years. Although Malaysia's constitutional monarchy mirrors the British system, the previous king has taken a more active political role in recent years, using once unprecedented discretionary powers during a period of government upheaval and corruption scandals, including the high-profile imprisonment of Prime Minister Najib Razak for his involvement in a multi-billion-dollar scandal at State Fund 1MDB.
When the regime fell apart in 2020, 2021 and 2022, the king was forced to step in to select the prime minister. So because of that, people are saying that the king now actually has some sort of reserve power. If the political class can't decide among themselves.
Australia's strong relationship with Malaysia not in jeopardy with the new king's personal connections.
You can argue that this new king is a plus factor for Australia-Malaysia relationship because he owns property in Perth.
A 21-gun salute heralding the start of his reign. Alexandra Jones, SBS World News.
That's the world this Wednesday. If you're in Australia, head to SBS On Demand for more news and analysis. And for viewers across the globe, subscribe to stay up to date with the latest stories from Australia and around the world. I'm Janice Peterson from the SBS World News team. Thanks for watching.